Hey guys, my name is Terry and I'm a collectibles dealer. I'm a big fan of music, but I'm not an expert. That's why we've got Johnny D.
What's up, y'all? This is Bow-Legged Lou,
Paul Anthony,
Baby Jerry, and we are the members of
Full Force. We just about to turn it up one or two notches in the mix with my man, Johnny D.
All right, good to see you again. Glad to be back here. We've got Jeremy again for another episode. How are you doing, Jeremy?
Yeah, doing great.
Why don't you show us a couple other things that you bought?
Yeah, I think, as I alluded to in part one, my collection's really varied between stuff that is really, truly one of one, incredibly rare stuff, and then stuff that's deeply personal. So I showed you the Billy Preston album, not a lot of market value, $100, $200 piece, not a lot of market value. It's priceless to me. We had started talking about something else. This was sort of a cool piece that I came across. What's cool about this one is, I don't know if you can see this one, Johnny. This is a Geto Boys piece.
That's great.
And,
beautiful.
So I found this one. There was a really prolific collector in Seattle. And Johnny, we were talking about this off air. We were talking about how in the 90s and particularly early 2000s when vinyl was really out of vogue, Europe always had a deep appreciation for hip hop and R&B, and they loved vinyl. The analog sound of it still meant a lot to them. So most of the vinyl pressings that I have, because I really like OG pressings, and if I can get those signed, it means a lot to me. Most of them came from Europe during that time, particularly with R&B and hip hop. So if I wanted to get something signed that was OG, it came from overseas. This particular guy just had a really good relationship with Bushwick Bill.
Wow.
He had dozens of pieces from him, some really cool, rare stuff, but being just a vinyl guy, I got this from him. And then my grapher, my guy who's amazing in Houston, tracked down Scarface and Willie D on two separate occasions for me. And so he got this one completed for me.
That's mine's playing tricks on one of my even Who's the Biggest on the Bushwick Bill I love, but that's one of my favorite records of all time, and that's a great piece.
Amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
That's a great piece.
So then, you can flip it up, right? And I sort of alluded to this on our other talk where I said I really wasn't into grunge. It wasn't my thing. I respected it, and particularly looking back retrospectively, I respect its place in music. But when I saw this come available, when I saw this come available,
that's signed by Kurt.
It's signed by Kurt, and it's signed by all three. And
that's beautiful. Man.
I've seen one other poster complete. Unfortunately, all of their graphs, Chris and Dave, are all of their graphs are really easy to replicate. They're really easy to forge. So finding legitimate ones with provenance that has multiple authentications, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There's always others that are out there. But in all of my collecting, I've never seen another Nirvana. And a lot of people know that I have this piece. And it is by far, I've been offered stupid money for this piece because, not only is the album cover absolutely iconic, but it defined an entire, not only generation of sound, but it defined an entire generation. There's just so few pieces that singularly represent an entire generation. So I'm not a huge fan, and I know that sounds terrible and sacrilegious, but I recognize how cool a piece it is.
You have to get it signed by that kid.
So they do that, and they do that, and I have thought about it, and unfortunately, because I think he had a lot of outspoken negativity about the album cover. I think he said a lot of negative. It kills the value of it. Now, granted, so I wouldn't do it, but I have seen him sign those.
That's funny.
There is a huge opportunity now for the right collector to buy some Billy Preston stuff and make a trade.
Yeah, for sure. So, look, this is all about us talking. It's just different stuff. This is interesting. So you can't really see this. You can't see it very well, but it's a really, really cool piece. So when Marvin Gaye was going through his drug fueled, when he was living in Hawaii, and he had sort of gone off the reservation. He went from this incredibly talented, handsome soul singer to then activist and voice of an entire generation of African American people, to then crossing over into like sort of this lover man type person, and then just unfortunately he lost his mind, which ultimately led to his demise. This is an 11-page letter he penned to his mother-in-law. And at the time, his wife was leaving him. She was threatening to leave him. And it is some of the craziest stuff you can imagine. I mean, it's very, very racist. It's very racist. There's expletives all over it. It's just, you can just tell his mindset that he was in. And in fact, you can't see it, but we'll put a better cover up. I mean, the entire envelope, I mean, I'm shocked like it was even delivered. The entire envelope is written, your souls need God, try Jesus for a change, be wise and live. And then it sort of shifts between like absolute anger and finding God. And then on another level, like motivational. It's just a wild letter to see. What I'm curious about is, because this was during a time that Jan was leaving him, and it was pretty widely speculated, if not confirmed, that Jan was having an affair with Rick James.
Wow.
And
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure. I've never cross-referenced the dates, because it says on here, this was from February 2nd, 1980, which would have been right when Rick James was ascending, taking the pop funk throne.
That was a year before Super Freak. Yeah.
So it very well could have been, and Rick was heavily involved with Motown at that point. So it very well could have been, because they met through each other, through their dealings with Motown. So I'm curious. I never put it together, but it's just an interesting piece of music history.
That's incredible.
That's a crazy piece.
How did you was that an auction piece?
That one was an auction. I'm pretty sure that was an auction piece.
When they listed it at auction, did they have photographs of the pages so you could read them without damaging it?
I don't recall. I don't recall. I know that the envelope was there, and then maybe the pages were taken out. I mean, again, these things are old. I mean, that document's 45 pages, 45 years old at this point. So people don't recognize how, flimsy and delicate paper can become.
Have you gone through and read?
I have not. So I read the front page.
That would be something I would be super excited to do.
Can you imagine to transcribe that and see what's really written in there?
Yeah, because that's the source material, right? Like, people can tell you, that's a great thing I love about letters too. We had an episode where we discussed some Tupac letters, and you hear from different people in the world what was their opinion of what was in the minds of these people, but reading it from the source is like there's nothing more genuine.
Particularly back then, where like everything we have now is on video or phone, or everything is podcast, everything's available. But to have that, to think that of the mindset that he must have been in during that time, writing a letter from Hawaii back to Detroit, I believe, is crazy.
It's crazy. And to tie it into Johnny's collecting, I mean, we had an early podcast where we talked about a Miss You Rolling Stones acetate, and it had 10
Love
minutes.
That track.
It had
Love
10
that
minutes.
Track. Love
and
that
the release track only had 8 minutes. So that's 2 minutes that only the band and like a couple other people had ever heard. And that's similar. It's like the original source material. You can't argue with that. Like that I love that. It's exciting.
Yeah, I worked with Roberta Flack on a couple of projects, and I had pulled a bunch of multi-track, her actual tapes from the studio, and most of our tapes were burned. There was a big fire at the Atlantic warehouse on the west side, so a lot of stuff was destroyed. And Back Together Again is my favorite record. It's of hers, and it's Roberta and Donny Hathaway. And Donny committed suicide, I think, right after that session. And the crazy thing is, when I put up that tape years ago, she's like cheering him on, which is really fucking eerie, realizing that was one of the last times. I think he might have committed that night.
What do you
But
mean cheering him on?
I've read about that studio session because he was.
yeah, he was in the session. That was M. Tume and James Lucas, Reggie Lucas and M. Tume were producing it, and I guess he was struggling.
Yeah.
And Roberta was like cheering him. I remember when I put up the multi-track, it wasn't a 40. I mean, I was in a 48 track studio,
Like
but
trying to motivate him? Is that what?
yes, yes. And then she told me that he was a very manic depressive and he would get very violent and then he would just come in and out. Arif told me the same thing. He was, he was in and out. And that session, and the funny thing is, I have the actual tape. Most of those tapes were safeties. And that tape, for whatever reason, was the real one. And I used to get them and make copies when I was getting mixes. I kept that actual tape
Wow.
with that, which is really cool. But yeah, when you get the thing about Marvin Gaye too is, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, but I mean, a lot of stuff is coming out now that he was supposedly gay. How crazy would it be in that letter if he even discusses that?
That I think the value of it would go up exponentially. Maybe
Yeah,
I
it's
need to read
crazy
it.
because I never heard that growing up,
I
but
didn't.
the last 10, 15 years, that's been the thing. And a lot,
Interesting.
a lot of people, I mean, you have people that are anti-gay or whatever. It was like all of a sudden there was this cloud over Marvin Gaye. I'm like, first of all, who cares what a
Right.
sexual preference is? But how that would erase this guy, one of the most iconic people in the history of music. Who cares? How would that be even a factor? But I only heard that the last 10, 15 years.
Huh. Yeah, I never. I mean, it's sad. At times where people have like an image and it kills them personally. But they
Yes.
uphold an image. I had not heard that, but it's talking about increasing the value of something. That recording session, if in fact what you were referencing is correct, that recording session is so famous, in music lore, because at that point I believe that Hathaway had even shifted to where he believed people were trying to kill him. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, that's what he was doing.
Yeah,
She said in the session, in the booth, he started acting up. He was like, oh, they're coming to get me.
yeah,
And she was like, yo, Donnie, it's just us. Like, what do you, no, they're coming to get me. And she told me that story, but I'm pretty positive she's like guiding him and his voice. I mean, I don't know if you're a Donnie fan. Donnie has one of the most beautiful voices ever.
amazing,
And he was
amazing.
just he was a one take guy and he was struggling.
I mean, it's just dawning on me how some of these collectibles, it's such a burden almost to have them because they're so important culturally, or maybe important is the wrong word. So many people would be interested to know what's in that letter, or so many people would be interested in hearing that session. Maybe some of it's a little bit morbid, but the curiosity and the interest, it's widespread.
Well, I think also the time we're living that everybody has instant access to every breath that's taken. You know, you don't have that in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So that's what makes all of that stuff so much more special because there isn't video footage. And if there is footage, it's grainy or whatever, and it's the access just isn't there. So people now who are looking back that like I was a kid in the 70s that cared about the past. I wasn't just like, oh wow, it's all about, it's
For
my world
sure,
and
for
whatever I
sure.
do is the world. I was concerned about history. And I felt that the last couple of years, you don't really have as much as we had. I think we were very concerned. I think because this came in and kind of destroyed, it helped in a lot of ways, but it did a lot of damage. I think that the kids are so into right now that if you're feeding them Marvin Gaye and you make it cool in 10 seconds with some guy on a skateboard drinking orange juice, then maybe all of a sudden what's going on is important. But we had Jeremy, I see if you noticed, did you ever hear of a guy named Malik Pendleton? Yeah,
No.
okay. So I forgot, he's a 90s R&B guy. He dated He dated Mary J. Blige,
Okay.
incredible singer, songwriter. This guy was incredible. My friend Rich signed him to Atlantic, and he was just this guy was just a great artist. Very good friends with Lucky Benson, George Benson's son.
Okay.
And I got to know Malik really well. He's from Newark and New Jersey. And I would get with him and Rich would bring me around. And he had this idea. He had a record called Look Around. And his idea was, we'll get Bob James, who obviously Bob James is iconic in his own world. And then in the hip hop world, he did Mardi Gras, which was the big breakbeat with Peter Piper and a million people have sampled. But Bob James, you're both familiar with Bob James, I'm assuming, right?
The name.
Okay,
not
anyway,
his
Bob
work.
James is iconic. There was a thing I took my son at the Blue Note a couple of years ago. It was Talib Kweli, him. It was, it was insane. It was just DMC was there with him, and Bob James came out live with Talib Kweli, and it was wild. Shook, whatchamacallit, Mobb Deep it was wild. Anyway, he's an iconic guy, jazz guy. But he did theme from Taxi, Angela. The TV show Angela. I mean, Taxi. So Malik's idea was, what if we get Bob James to drive a taxi? Malik's in the back seat, going over the Brooklyn Bridge, and you're looking out the window. And it wanted to make the modern day what's going on. Because it was that kind of a record. It was like, look around, the drugs and this and the pollution. And it was going to be Bob James driving this, which is crazy. And as you're looking out the window, you're seeing kids with drugs and this and that. It was unbelievable. We met with Bob James. I actually had him to sign all my stuff, which was a great thing. And Bob is, still alive and unbelievably legendary. What happened was we had this Malik album ready to go, and Puffy, now, out of jail Puffy, was always very in tune to what was going on. So he was like, oh, this guy's about to come out. I'm going to do him better, but pop. And he came out with this guy, Carl Thomas, which I'm sure you're familiar
Of
with.
course.
And
I wish.
I wish. So basically, he made I Wish, rushed it to the marketplace. Carl Thomas blew up. Malik was in the background, never had a shot. He was dating Mary J. He wound up doing, are you familiar with the record 7 Days with Mary J. Blige?
Of course. That's a great track.
He wrote and produced that. And if you listen to the end of it, that guitar is George Benson.
Oh, that's sick.
Incredible.
That's sick.
So so that's that whole time. But so that's the whole Marvin Gaye kind of thing. But that would have been the modern day what's going on. That would have kind of given a little bit more shine to Marvin Gaye, to the younger, at that time.
Jeremy, how about showing us another piece?
So I don't know in what context, one of you brought up Tupac, and I don't remember in what context it was, but this was, so I've got 3 or 4 Tupac lyrics, which he was such a prolific writer, right? Anybody who knows him, his theatrics and his front of camera stuff was one version of him. Him as a tireless worker and recorder is an entirely different story about Tupac that people don't appreciate enough. I mean, his catalog of music. So my favorite rap group of all time is the Digital Underground. I love them. I think they're underappreciated. Both Shock G as an artist as well as a rapper. His uniqueness with cultivating an alter ego and everything they stood for, intertwining funk and samples, and also having political messages. They were just brilliant to me. Underappreciated rap group. And of course, then the fact that Tupac's early beginnings are with them, and then Tupac, I know exactly where I was the first time I heard Tupac on Tupacalypse Now. I recognized him from Same Song, and then the first time I heard him, I was like, man, this guy's something different. You could hear the fire in his voice when he rapped. But so his lyrics are amazing, but there's a ton of lyrics. But he wrote a lot when he was in prison. And he had a girlfriend, Simi, who was pretty known, and she sold off her whole collection of Tupac letters that she had. And she recognized the value, right? Because his ascension to fame and then his immediate murder was so tight that his stuff, people still had a lot of his stuff. That's why you see so much Tupac stuff circulated, because there wasn't time for people to throw this stuff out. So there's so much of it. But this is a really, really cool one. And it means the most to me because as a music lover, he sent her a playlist, and he said, you can't see it, and we'll put it up, But he wrote this when he was in prison, and it says Tupac's list of tapes to get and listen to when you're alone. So this is him in prison telling his girlfriend, this is the mixtape I want you to make. And what's crazy about it is what it really lends insight, right? We've sort of learned more about Tupac over the years, that maybe he wasn't as much this gangster as he, you know, when you see him in his theater arts school, when you see him acting, and it sort of comes together more that it was a persona that was sort of calculated and created, but deep down he was truly an artist. And so when you look at the names on this list, it's nothing like what you would ever think. So I'm just going to read you some of these names. The first one is Jamiroquai, The Return of the Space Cowboy. I love Jamiroquai. Love that album. Like, love him. But you tell me in 1990, this was probably written in, this was 1994, 1995 when he wrote this letter in prison. Like, are you thinking Tupac's listening to Jamiroquai? But it gets more interesting. The second one is Counting Crows. Like, what? Like, and then it's Dion Ferris. Amazing. And then Sarah McLachlan. Like, that's crazy to me. This ultra emotional, very, very, you know, feminine perspective driven album, and Tupac's listening to it. It tells you, it's like you, Johnny, on part one, and you're telling me what's on your wall above you, and you're ranging from early 80s hip hop to Tori Amos. Like, that's what Tupac's given us in this letter. And then and then he gets into, so these are the 5 albums that he wanted. And so, but then he gets into like specific songs, right? But number 5, and this is why I had to have this piece, irrespective of cost, was Prince. So here's Tupac. Prince is still alive at the time. Tupac's obviously alive. And Tupac is saying, it's not just an album. He's saying, get the hits, the B-sides, everything. I mean, and then he writes the specific song titles to put on a tape. And at the end, he writes, for the ideal result, put all these songs on one tape, enjoy, and think of me. Like, that's a very human thing to do. Right. Like that, I don't know what was Tupac when he died, 26, 27. So, you know, he's probably 24 years old writing this. Like, that's just what every young man is doing, trying to capture the attention or have somebody think about them in the song.
Not to mention that he's in jail.
He's in jail. Like, it's just
that is so incredible.
It's just so cool. Really. It's really cool.
Yeah, music is a universal language, and when you see something like that, you can definitely recognize it.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that I always find one of the things that fascinates me being a music lover is another artist either talking about music
for sure,
or seeing them sing somebody else's song. I remember there was Madonna's background vocalists with Donna DeLore and Harris. Anyway, I can't think of her name. There were the 2 girls, and one of them was signed to Atlantic. So I was up at Atlantic. This is before I was working there, and I met her, and I got Nikki Harris, and I got very cool with her. She was really nice, and I was always asking her about Madonna. But you want to kind of go easy because it's not she's an artist as well. She just got signed, and I'm like, hey, tell me about how great Madonna is, And so I had to kind of go easy with deep digging into it, and that record, Everybody was out, which was a big dance record.
Yeah, I know that track. Yep.
And she was talking about Madonna, talking about that record. And it made me, it just, when these people are normalized, it just gives it this, it just changes it all.
Everything.
Because we look at them, you're watching the video, you're watching this, you're watching all these things happen. But when you're like, wow, she's just singing everybody, and she's wondering what that lyric is, because we all wonder when they're going, set and free, and then like she does an ad-lib in it, and it's actually Martha Wash who's on the song, and Madonna was wondering what she was saying, and I think we all were, but like that's so cool just because you're seeing the normal side of Madonna, and that's why that Tupac, I mean, to see that list, that's a priceless, things like that are just incredible. It's incredible.
And I'm with you. There is nothing more that speaks to me. That's why like the autographs and the written stuff speaks so much to me. I'm not saying that I'm right or that they carry more value. I'm just saying it speaks to me because the minute you like, right, we all as humans, right, whether it's athletes or actors, we sort of we put them on pedestals, then we naturally sort of want to see them fall off, then we want to see their reascension, or we want to see we're sick like that. But the other side of it is because when we feel like they're human to us, like that, like you said, to use your Madonna example, or to picture Tupac listening to Sarah McLachlan or seeing him dance, and in his own room, not gangster Tupac, but he would put on Sexy Motherfucker, he'd put on something, and he's just, and so I'm with you. I think it's just, the humanization of them is remarkable.
I had one of the Tori Amos record I worked on, which was her biggest pop record, Professional Widow. When she was signing, I gave her a bunch of stuff to sign, and I did different things with the pictures. The album cover for she just signed, Love Tori or whatever, and on one of them, on Professional Widow, she wrote, "To Johnny D, love you, whatever, Tori D." Which I always thought was really cool that she cool. I had no idea. And that's like cool. Tori Amos to do that. It's not really her character to kind of do something like that. And I didn't ask her. It was in the package. She had sent like 5 things, and that was in there, which I always thought was kind of cool.
Very cool. All right, let's see what else we got. Again, I just tried to bring in like a wide range of different interesting things. Some value, some not, some written, some not.
Oh, I see DMX.
All right, so I'll show you this one. So this one's interesting to me because I think it's a good story. So
that's fantastic, man.
So that's great, man.
So this one says, "To my dog, Crazy Rob, from way back, thanks for the support." So obviously, when he died, his stuff went through the roof, right? And his, it's like all these artists when they die, right? We exponentially overnight they particularly from a value perspective. DMX was, as a from an autograph perspective, was hilarious. Unfortunately, he was on drugs a lot, or high or drunk a lot. But there are countless stories. Remember, this is the absolute time where there was no vinyl. But there's quite a few CDs that exist out there. But this album has like a couple unique reasons why I wanted to bring it in. The first is because it is the perfect example of a really hard to get album that wasn't available. Second he was very difficult. DMX the only way that he would get you to sign, and he would sign, he would say to you, "I want to know if you're a real fan. You can't rap any of my songs that have been on the radio. I'll sign for you if you can rap a whole verse." And there are countless stories. I mean, dozens of stories of people being like, "I had to rap for DMX to get him to sign this."
I love that.
So that's really cool because he loved his fans.
What a memory. What a memory rapping for DMX. Can you imagine being
put on this? First of all, even if I knew every lyric to his songs, just the sheer adrenaline and of that moment being face to face and knowing you have such a small window, right? He's being ushered wherever he goes. So that's a really cool story. The second reason that this album is really cool is because just like you and I are having like this really cool connection over music, and Terry and I do about collectibles, this album came from a guy who sold it to me who really didn't want to sell it. I mean, he made a lot of money selling it, but he didn't want to sell it. But he knew that he would never see this piece again. He knew that he would never see this piece on an auction house. He knew me. We have become friends through this process, and he knew that it was going to a good home. And this is one of the few industries that is so filled with bad or malintentioned people. It's filled with fraud, and people are just trying to profit. The flip side of it is, for the true collectors, you didn't know me for 5 seconds, and you're like, "Hey, I've got this Christina Aguilera album. I'd love for you to have it." You don't know me. But people who love it and who feel this stuff, they speak a different language, and they know how important it is. Just like what you were saying, setting timers. I set on Sunday, I set a timer for a Luther Vandross auction. The piece went for $99. Luther sells for $600-$700. I missed the auction because I was dicking around. I didn't even pay attention to my timer. I hit the reset button.
What was it?
It was, I can't remember the name of the album. He's in like a yellow shirt and he's laying to his side. It's.
Give me the reason. I'm going to tell you. You know what's crazy? It just really. I was just telling Terry off screen. I said, "You and I have so many powers." I wanted to interrupt you to tell you my Luther Vandross story when you were talking about the guy singing for DMC. I'm in the studio with Luther, and I'm sitting there, and I had him sign a bunch of my stuff. And as he's across from me, he looks at me and says, "Hey, John, do you ever eat bagels?" I says, "Yeah." He goes, "How many do you have?" I says, "I don't know, one." He goes, "If I sit down, I'll have 13 bagels." And he was explaining to me out of nowhere about how his weight would fluctuate. So I'm looking at him, and I don't know why I did it. I broke into Never Too Much, and I did the whole verse.
You still got it in you?
They
You still
looked
got
at
it
your
in you?
picture just to get me started. I told you. He looked at me, and like he instantly fell in love with me at that moment. He's like, "This fucking guy is a real deal."
You have a history of doing an artist for an artist, though. I mean, that's like the third time you brought,
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Jazzy
But it
Jeff.
was,
I love
yeah.
Luther.
Well, Jazzy
Like,
Jeff was like, yeah,
love Luther.
Bismarcky.
Hip hop, oh yeah, Bismarck. It was classic. But the Luther one was like, it was so funny. As you were telling that story, I'm thinking about, you're talking about DMX, and I'm thinking of the Luther thing. So the fact that you brought up Luther is it's crazy. When I, it's funny you mentioned when I had him sign my stuff, so I bring all my albums there. So Change is the first record he had to hit, the Glow of Love, which is a non-Luther Vandross. Then he's got Never Too Much, and it goes all the way to the end. So I designed this big plaque, and I told my guy that was doing but what I was doing was, you probably kind of against this as an autograph guy. I was getting my autograph album covers. I was having them shellacked on wood. I was doing the frame. So they're all shellacked. I have them all over the house. Shaka Khan. I mean, I got everybody. And I didn't frame them. So some people say, "Oh, there's no value," but I'm like I said, these are personalized to me. I'm not looking at the value. I like the wood thing. So anyway, I get Luther Vandross to sign all these albums. So he signs them all. I give them to this guy. I said, so it's going to be like a tree, a big board, crazy weight. Change, Never Too. Oh no, Greatest Hits 1 and 2. Then Never Too Much all the way through. I get it. The guy brings it back. It's got Change. Change. Volume 1.
Oh,
space,
no.
Volume.
Oh,
he put
no.
a space between it.
Gosh.
So I get this fucking thing, and it's like you can't undo it. It's shellacked. So it's tremendous. I have it on my wall. When you come to the house, you'll see it. It's tremendous. So then I said, like, what the hell am I gonna do with this? Like, that space is gonna fucking drive me insane. Luther's coming back to the studio. I get it. I bring it to my office. I get in the cab. This thing. I go up. I go in the room. Luther's looking at me. I bring a white marker with me because it's on wood. So he's looking at me. So I said, "You gotta do me a favor." So he thought I was presenting him the plaque.
No.
He wanted to keep it. He goes, "Oh, you made that?" I said, "No, actually, you got to do me a favor. This guy fucked up." So he took a white marker and then he signed in the middle. But this guy ruined and you can't undo it. You can't undo the shellac. So anyway, when Luther did sign my stuff with his blue Sharpie, I kept that separately. I have it in an envelope where I always say with the DNA or whatever on his fingertips. I had that. But Luther was and how I met Luther, just not that I don't want to hijack this thing, but real quick, the irony was in the studio with BB Winans, which we had discussed on one of the sessions, and we're doing a remix, and BB said, "Yeah, I want to get some background vocals." So I'm in the studio with the engineer and the two producers, and we don't know who he's talking to. She's like, yeah. 20 minutes later, whatever it was, who walks in the door? Luther Vandross from Fonzie Thornton. And, we're all looking at each other like, what the hell's going on? And that was BB getting a background vocalist, Luther Vandross. And then from there, I was able to, my friends who I brought to produce the BB produced his next record on Virgin when he left Epic. And that's how I got him to sign everything.
I can see your pot. The pile is switched. What's next in your?
Yeah, I'm looking at, because I grabbed some. So there's not much left on the pile. This is just a cool piece because I've got this is Led Zeppelin signed by all four, and as a collector, the reason I brought this one is I have Led Zeppelin II, I have Led Zeppelin IV. Of course, Bonham, having John Bonham on it is what makes it particularly unique. What's really cool about this one is how vintage and perfect the signatures are going down. So it's a vintage signature all at the same time, all using ballpoint pen.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah, that's an incredible piece.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I love how he's downplaying that. Yeah, by the way, here's a it happens to be
No,
perfect.
but that's the sign. That's the sign.
You know, whatever. But let me tell you more about my Bobby Womack across 180. It's just insane. Like it's nuts. That's crazy.
That's a showstopper piece.
All right, so this one is, you talk about the human element of something, and we were talking about Prince and Arista. You're going to think this one's cool, or at least I hope you will. So this one means a lot to me. So this is original Handwritten Prince lyrics. I think I've got like 7 or 8 Prince lyrics, including "I Feel for You," original handwritten. Yeah. But the reason this one is so cool is I don't know if you can see, but it's called "Slowly the Candle Burns," and anybody who knows when this was when he wrote that, it was around 1995, and so he was in so much turmoil, right? There was multiple things going on in his life. One, his music had become highly unpopularized. He had almost become a caricature of himself. That was when he put the slave on his face, right? Was that time? Look, this is just nuts. So I'll come back to that. So everything right. He's having major record label disputes with Warner Brothers. He puts out a garbage album called Chaos and Disorder, which actually a lot of people in retrospect like, but he was very intentional about putting to fulfill his contract. He thought was a bunch of garbage, but when you're an absolute savant and genius, like your garbage is somebody else's best work. Absolutely. So, but even when people look at it, in the rearview mirror, it's really strong work. But mainly to him was he no longer had a sound, right? The sound that he had really cultivated in the 80s, late 80s, the uniqueness had really given way to sampling music and hip hop and grunge. He didn't have a place anymore. And so and that's when we were talking about, like, when he started developing he had been reinvigorated. His wife was pregnant. They were about to have a baby. He wrote all these really romantic songs. He wrote a lot of songs that were also very angry. They were veiled in like funk and veiled, but there was a lot of anger. And so I can't believe you brought this up, because what is so cool about this song called "Slowly the Candle Burns" is, on one element, I think that a lot of men at different points in their life go through this psychological process that he was clearly going through. So this was 96. So he would have been, he was born in 58. So he would have been 38 years old writing this. So 38-year-old men going through things whether you're feeling underappreciated or you don't know where you're at in life. And so he wrote this song called "Slowly the Candle Burns." And if you read the lyrics, it's talking about just how his light is beginning to dim. Like, so he's using this analogy of a candle at 38 years old, saying, I'm dimming, like the world is eroding who I am, but nothing more than my contract disputes with Warner Brothers. Because he really wanted to stay there. But he really wanted to stay there, but he wanted to own his masters. And so you talk about, like, look, I can talk about Prince for days in terms of his tireless work ethic, in terms of how he was one of the first, if not first, artists to be he had his own website and he's selling download streamings. He had his own music club where he was pushing music. This is like 1997, 98, 99, where he's selling music on his website through fan clubs. Like, everything that he did, he was so cutting edge. Where we're at today, 30 years later than what he was fighting for, where artists finally really understand how important it is to own their masters. He was fighting for this in 1995. So even just how brilliant you are, putting so much pressure, using really, sort of something that's not even speakable because of our nation's history, writing "slave" on your face, right? It was more saying, if I'm not the master, then clearly I'm the slave. And so, to your point in bringing that up, this song, this exact lyrics, which was by far I don't know how many tracks were on Emancipation, but let's call it 35 to 40 tracks. This was the most important song to him that ultimately he renamed "Slave." And so you bringing that up and you talking about writing "Slave," "Slowly the Candle Burns," it's the exact same lyrics. "Slowly the Candle Burns" never was released. "Slave," the song, and that's when he came out and he started making all of his appearances with the word "slave."
Wow, that's pretty fucking incredible.
So that's cool. So
that's crazy.
2 more for you. I know I'm talking a lot, but they mean something to me. This one is really, really cool. I've never seen another one. I've seen some that have really bent up corners, or I've seen one that somebody was just absolutely, I don't know what they were thinking. They cut the bottom half off of it. But this is a complete Jimi Hendrix experience, signed by Noel and Mitch, and of course Jimmy. It's
great.
It's just obviously an original pressing. He writes "Love Always and Forever" on it, and he also writes "Stay Sweet," which he was known to do. He, to women, he would write "Stay Sweet" on their albums, and it's just, in terms of the pantheon of change, it's sort of up there with. I mean, to me, it's much more sonically important than Nirvana, but in terms of what changed an entire direction of music, this album really spoke to me, and it's a really cool piece. So some stuff has no value. This obviously has extraordinary value.
But there's a crossover to some that have a lot of meaning to you personally,
For sure.
and a lot of value.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that piece.
So, and I'll end it with something that, we love music, and we all have, like, if I asked you, Johnny, like, if you had just one, if your island record, meaning you only get one tape you can take to the island, what, but you get one, it's hard. It's hard.
What, is this your island record?
It is. I say this with all sincerity. It is a perfect album to me. It's just a perfect album. How I could take one record would be impossible. But in terms of the impact it had on my life, how I feel it is lyrically, how I feel it is musically, how I feel it was so unique and original to the time, and it gets nowhere near the respect it should get in music as a whole. I feel the artist as a whole is one of the most. I've long wanted to pen an article called the most unappreciated or underappreciated artists, despite selling tens of millions of records and despite selling out arenas, is this one. So again, I don't know. I mean, it's an original. It's Maxwell's Urban Hang Suite.
Oh, I got you.
And it is, from the opening note to the closing, it is a perfect album.
Great album. Absolutely.
Every song, the depth of, I don't know how old he was. I guess he would have been like 22, 21 years old, writing this incredibly mature, perfect album. I wish I used to give this album to people who I met, like people who I when I was in my 20s. If I met somebody who I really liked and really appreciated, I would give them this album, because it was it captured so much of the emotion that I was feeling in life, and just sort of how I was seeing the world. Maxwell and I are close to the same age, and to me, it's such an important album to me. It's like there's 1999 and there's Maxwell's Urban Hang Suite, and so it's just my little plug in this, for your audience to say, if you don't know this album, you should know this album.
It's amazing how you could just feel how special that album is to you. I mean, I know Maxwell from Woman's Work, and that's about my limited knowledge of it. But just listening to you talk about it, I mean, anyone couldn't help but understand how deep it is for you.
I remember when the Don't Ever Wonder came out.
Yeah.
And BLS in New York was playing it on the radio. They were comparing him to Donny Hathaway. I remember them talking about that. But Don't Ever Wonder, was that the one cut that was either co-written or written by Etel Shear, the guy who wrote Smooth for Santana and Rob Thomas? Is that right? Or am I confused?
I don't think so. His collaborations on that were with Wawa Watson and Stuart Matthewman of Sade.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Like, he had great producers on it, and
yes.
But it is.
That was a great. I actually just sold one of those for a lot of money a couple of months ago, because those 90s R&B and hip hop albums on vinyl, they're really, really hot. Even with the reissues out, people want the original, and mine had the promo cut corner and stuff, and I got a good amount of money for it.
Yep. So that's my plug on, if you genuinely love music, it is impossible not to love that album.
Well, look, it's been great having you, Jeremy, and thanks for sharing your collection with us. Johnny, great to see you. And
thank you. It was great, man. Really incredible stuff.
Loved it. Appreciate it, John. Terry, appreciate you both.